Somebody please tell me how it makes sense to be proud to be broke, going to sleep hungry every night, and you claim to be woke. A time-old tale of benevolent authority is clearly a fable. How the hell am I empowered by being completely unable to put food on the table? Being dependent for my shelter, food, and clothing sounds like slavery with a fancier label, plus the broadband. But if the revolution's televised, how will I watch it if they just cut the cable? Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Killer Mike is under fire again, this time from rapper NoName. Along with fellow anti-capitalists, some of them that are, at least one of them, is in an organization with her. And he also went on his live stream on YouTube. He goes by the handle I Mix What I Like. And he had some critiques for Killer Mike in regards to his ideology and his support for capitalism, among other things. So the interesting thing is that this exchange started with Killer Mike talking about the work he does and responding to a criticism of somebody who goes by the handle Queer Socialist. And that led to him talking about some of his heroes, which include Martin, Malcolm, Fred Hampton, and that's when NoName got involved to point out that people like Fred Hampton were directly opposed to capitalism. Mike pointed out that people like Garvey weren't, and that's true. We have black historical figures who were supporters of socialism, and some who were supporters of socialism, some who were supporters of capitalism. If you remember, in my African History Month's episodes, this is one of the themes I talked about, how socialists and communists just kept showing up whenever the black struggle was front and center, and they kept aligning themselves insinuating themselves with into the black struggle. My thoughts is that they clearly have an agenda, and they're trying to use they've seen an opportunity to exploit the division within various countries, like in the United States, to advance their own agenda. So they seem to sidle up and, hey, yes, I'm with you, solidarity, and then they bring black people over to their side to advance their agenda, regardless of whether it's actually beneficial to black people, and it's not. But we'll get into that. So let's just take a look at the Twitter thread first. So it begins with Mike talking to somebody who had criticized him, saying, hey, he actually puts in work, and he's like, hey, what kind of work do you do? Basically telling them to put up or shut up. And then he's like, well, yeah, back to my original point, Martin, Malcolm, and Fred were my heroes. But NoName gets involved and says, well, hey, they were against capitalism. And he's like, well, Garvey wasn't against capitalism. He named some other people. And then she's like, well, black people suffered and were exploited, murdered under capitalism. And basically says he's working with white supremacy. He then agrees to contact her offline, and that's about where the thread ends. After looking at this Twitter thread, it strikes me that there's this belief that capitalism is somehow anti-black. How this boggles the mind is because of all the crimes and atrocities that were committed against black people by the state. So if capitalism is private ownership of goods, of commerce, of trade, and the alternative would be state control. So like, how can you say that, oh, well, privately owned is bad, but the state, the one that led in all of these crimes against black people and committed these atrocities against black people, it's a good idea to give that entity more power. In fact, not just more power, but all power and control over our lives. I don't get it. And I guess I don't get it because it doesn't make sense. But there's several points that I think are clearly being missed. My defense of capitalism isn't about, oh, this is the greatest system in the world. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is a system that allows us as individuals to have power over us. You see, these other ideologies, so for instance, an ideology where the state controls commerce, the state distributes the goods and services that we have. If the state is feeding me, if the state is clothing me, if the state is housing me, how can I ever oppose the state? Because if I decide that the state is doing something I don't like and I stand up, what can the state do? They don't even need to actively commit violence. They just need to stop doing something. They can stop feeding me. And then what do? I bow down or starve. That's what I see capitalism as providing. That's what I see. And I'm not going to use the word capitalism for right now. Right now, I'm going to use ownership. That's what I see as the benefit of private ownership. If I own farmland, I grow my own food. Guess what I don't need other people for? I don't need somebody else's approval in order for me to eat. So if I have ideas that other people don't like, okay, oh well, you can feel whatever way you feel. You're not going to stop me from eating. If I have my own house, if I have my own land, okay, I still have a place to sleep. You don't have to like what I think. You don't have to like the way I live. I'm going to live this way. If I own my own vehicles, my own clothing, my own weapons, once again, I don't need you to approve of what I do. And I'm looking at this in the terms of, because they are NoName and this, I believe his name is Jordan Ball, are part of this group, and they deal with like intersectionality, and it makes me curious that in their ideology, what happens when you have somebody, if you take a look at their ideology and what they believe, what if they win? What if they get their way and you have a system where the state is in control? Assuming that's what they want. Maybe they just want worker co-ops, but we'll start with the state. The state is in control of the means of production. It's feeding people, clothing people, housing people. And then let's say a person says, you know, if because this is happening now. So if somebody doesn't want to use somebody's preferred pronouns, are they going to starve that person? They can say, okay, listen, you either start using that person's preferred pronouns or you don't eat. Now, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people that say, yeah, that's what you get. Respect people and use their pronouns. Okay, cool. But let's flip that. What if instead of having somebody who wants everybody to use people's preferred pronouns, you have an administration in power that refuses to acknowledge people's preferred pronouns? What if that administration not only refuses to acknowledge, it refuses to allow people to use pronouns other than what they have deemed the person is? Now, you have this administration, this government, this state entity who's responsible for feeding, clothing, housing everybody, and you have an individual that wants to use their own pronouns. And the state says, no, these are the pronouns you use. If you attempt to use or to tell people that you have these other pronouns, if you refuse to, in fact, not only if you refuse to tell, if you try to tell people you have other pronouns, we want to hear you use these pronouns which we have made, which we are saying are yours. This is what you must do if you want to eat. Now, do you still feel the same way? Do you still feel, oh, this is a good idea? This is something that's beneficial. Leaving people completely at the mercy of somebody else for their food, shelter, and clothing. And I know where the argument's going to go. Oh, that's capitalism. Except that in capitalism, you have options. Because let's say I do work for Jeff Bezos. I work for Amazon and I'm getting starvation wages. And then you'll say, okay, well, see, now you're at the mercy. If you don't do what they say, you don't get paid. But you see, where there's private entities, I have the opportunity to go someplace else. I have the opportunity to go to another company and say, okay, listen, I want to work for you. X, this is what I bring to the table. And I may be able to even make more money. And so I don't have to do whatever Jeff Bezos and his crew were saying. I don't have to put up with his horrid working conditions. I can go someplace else. I have options. If the state is the arbiter of this, I just have to leave the country? So that's a huge, huge difference that I don't see being acknowledged. But the entire point is, what I see private ownership is power. It's power. It's power over me. If I own my own food, my own clothing, my own housing, I have power over my life. If somebody else owns it, let's go to the cooperative, the worker cooperative. So we have a group of people and we decide together. And by together, votes. So when you have a vote, that means I'm at the mercy of the mob. Okay, mob is counterproductive. I'm at the mercy of the masses, which is great for you if you are in complete agreement with the masses. But what if you're an individual? What if you're a little weird? What if you're a little different? What if you don't see things the way everybody else sees things? You think outside the box. You dance to your own drum. Was it you dance to your own beat? Something like that. See? Yeah, I'm one of those people. I don't always agree with everybody. I'm a loner. I like to do things my way. I don't need to do things and just conform with what everybody else is doing. What then? Do I get threatened? Do I get threatened to conform to everybody else the way everybody else does things? Or else I don't get to eat. I don't have a place to live. Or I just get the worst food, the worst place to live. I get treated like a pariah. I'm at the mercy of the masses. None of that makes sense. And this argument that black people can't succeed under capitalism is absolutely ridiculous. What people aren't recognizing and aren't acknowledging, aside from historical accounts and evidence of black people succeeding within capitalism, of present events, present instances and examples of black people succeeding under capitalism, is the fact that, yes, there is some rigging in the system. But guess what? Just because there are people rigging the system doesn't mean they can't be outsmarted. However, you're going to fail if you're depending upon that same system to educate you. So if you're going to the state-sponsored schools, if you're going to the enemy's schools, if you're sending your children and putting them in the custody of control of the enemy for 13 years, and then after those 13 years, your children are grown and are unable to participate, to be knowing, intelligent participants in capitalism, that's not because they're black. That's because you allowed the enemy to teach your children. And the enemy did not teach your children to be a participant in capitalism. The enemy taught your children to be a victim of capitalism. The enemy taught your children to be a perpetual worker. That's what the enemy taught your children. That's why your children are going to be working for somebody else from cradle to grave. Because you are listening to the wrong people. You're sending your children to the wrong people to be educated. And you're not teaching them how to succeed in capitalism. I do have a message for Killer Mike, because I see how things are going. I see that there is an intense amount of peer pressure. What I really don't like is the lie that capitalism is anti-black, that black capitalism cannot succeed. when we see numerous examples of black capitalism succeeding. We have black billionaires. We have black men who grew up in the projects, billionaires. We have black men who were hustling on the street corners, multi-millionaires, mega millionaires. We have black women who've went through hell, millionaires, mega millionaires, billionaires. The opportunities are there. What we can be doing, what we should be doing, is teaching our children to take advantage of these opportunities. They're there. The technology is making things so much easier. Right now you have YouTube, where you have little kids, little white kids, getting on here, making millions of dollars. Little black kids could be doing the same thing. We have to stop letting people who never fail to find problems for any solution be the spokespeople. There are people out here who can encourage our kids, motivate our kids, drive our kids, and educate our kids to be better. But then there's people out there who are constantly going to say, no, you can't do this. Oh, that can't happen. And with this picture of Malcolm behind me, I keep thinking about that teacher. When Malcolm said, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. And this teacher says, no, that's not realistic for a Negro. How are these people different? They're sitting here trying to peer pressure you by claiming you're anti-black, but they're sitting here telling black children, black youth, black men and black women, you can't do it. You can't win. There's no way you can succeed. So who's really anti-black, Mike? Please think about that. Their messaging, they got some great messaging. Look beyond the message and ask them this question. How is it empowerment to own nothing, to produce nothing, and to be completely dependent upon others for your survival? Thank you for watching this episode of Escaping the Echo Chamber. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment below if you agree. And if you don't agree, feel free to give me a thumbs down. But before you give me a thumbs down, make sure you comment in the comment section why you're giving me a thumbs down. And I'll address it either in the comment section or in a future video. I'll see you next time.